Please shall we take the national anthem and AAUA anthem? Thank you. Shall we all have our seats? On behalf of our Vice Chancellor, Professor Obrupin, I warmly welcome you to the 38th Inaugural Lecture at University. Today's Inaugural Lecture is titled Still Powerless Before Male Subordinates, Contra-Power Sexual Harassment of Women Leaders in the Workplace. I'm glad to inform this distinguished gathering the lecturer is a professor of industrial sociology and gender relations. He's also the ninth professor in the Faculty of the Social Sciences to deliver inaugural lecture at this university. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to recognize and welcome Professor Emmanuel Abiodun Fayankinnu. I also want to inform this distinguished audience that Professor Fayankinnu is the 23rd professor to deliver inaugural lecture in the series of our current Vice Chancellor. Please let's put a hand together for our Vice Chancellor. I think we can do more, please. I think our Vice Chancellor is doing great. Distinguished principal officers, deans, directors, professors, HODs and HOUs, staff of this university, our dear great students, ladies and gentlemen, once again, on behalf of the Vice Chancellor, I warmly welcome you all to the 38th inaugural lecture of our university. Without wasting much of your time, let me invite to the microphone the chairman of this occasion, our Vice Chancellor, Professor Olubenga Ige, to present the inaugural lecture.
The Deputy Vice Chancellors, the Registrar, Poster, University Librarian, distinguished deans of faculties and units, distinguished professors, the inaugural lecturer, Professor Fayankinnu, Emmanuel, other distinguished guests that are there present, the families of the inaugural lecturer, members of staff at Abiodun University, the officer in charge, Special Protection Unit from those states, CSP Rochas, who is also attending our inaugural lecture this afternoon. Let me welcome you all to Abiodun University. It is with immense pleasure that I warmly welcome all of you to the 30th inaugural lecture of Abiodun University at Contra-Power. This distinguished event remains one of our university's most esteemed academic traditions, an enduring platform for showcasing intellectual excellence, scholarly distinction, and the unwavering commitment of our academics to knowledge advancement and societal transformation. Inaugural lectures are far more than ceremonial occasions. They are pivotal academic engagements through which our professors reflect on their scholarly odysseys, present the core of their research endeavors, and illuminate future directions for inquiry and impact. Through such lectures, the university community and indeed the wider public gains invaluable insights into the relevance, depth, and transformative potential of academic scholarship. Today, I gathered to honor a distinguished academic, an accomplished sociologist, and an experienced administrator, Professor Emmanuel Abiodun Fayankinnu. Professor's lecture, still powerless before male subordinates, Contra-Power sexual harassment of women leaders in the workplace, is both profound and timely. Draws attention to pressing societal issues, an intersection of gender, power, and workplace relations. Look forward to thought-provoking insights that will enrich the discourse and far pathways towards equity and justice in professional spaces. Professor Fayankinnu's academic profile exemplifies resilience, consistency, and excellence. He earned his BSc in sociology at Ondo State University in 1995. Subsequently obtained his MSc in Industrial, Gender, Development Sociology in 1999, and a PhD in same feat in 2008, both from the great University of Ibadan. He began his academic career at the university in 2001 as an assistant lecturer in the Department of Sociology, and rose to the ranks to become a professor in 2016. Please give him a round. Over the years, Professor Fayankinnu has served this university with dedication to several leadership roles, including Director of Part-Time Programs, then Faculty of Social and Management Sciences, Acting Director, General Studies Unit, Acting Head, Department of Sociology, Acting Head, Department of Agricultural Extension and Rural Development, Acting Director, Center for Research and Development. From March 16, 2022 to March 15, 2024, he served Nigeria meritoriously as a technical aid corps volunteer at the Islamic University in Uganda. He has also rendered academic services as a visiting lecturer, external examiner, and assessor in several reputable institutions, including, but not limited to, University of Warsaw and the Polish Academy of Diplomacy in Poland. Emmanuel University Lagos, Kogi State University Ayimba, Federal University Oye, University of Ibadan, Lagos State University, and Abiodun University. Professor Fayankinnu's scholarly engagement have taken him far and wide. He has participated in academic conferences in countries such as Ghana, Liberia, South Africa, Tunisia, Tanzania, Malawi, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Cape Verde, Seychelles, Jamaica, Poland, Sweden, Finland, and so on. He has authored chapters in 8 books and published over 40 journal articles in reputable articles. He has also supervised 8 postgraduate students, including 4 PhD candidates. Academic pursuits have attracted several prestigious grants, awards, and fellowships, such as Tetmon Travel Grant from Finland in 2013-2017, Tetmon Research Grant 2016, UNFPA Travel Grant 2007, and UNDP Travel Grant 2003. Professor Fayankinnu holds membership in several professional bodies, including the Nigerian Anthropological and Sociological Association, NASA, Social Science Academy of Nigeria, International Union of African Population Scholars, and the International Sociological Association, Madrid, in Spain. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, today's lecture is not just an academic obligation. It is a celebration of Professor Fayankinnu's enduring commitment to scholarship, contributions to industrial sociology and gender studies, and his unwavering dedication to mentoring future scholars and leaders. Promises to provide thoughtful reflection, spark meaningful dialogue, and offer practical insights to tackling critical societal issues, particularly sexual harassment in the workplace. In closing, which to express on behalf of the university our profound appreciation to Professor Emmanuel Abiodun for his unwavering devotion to academic excellence, his invaluable contributions to the growth of knowledge, and his exemplary service to this university and the global academic community as a whole. Listen, I urge everyone to engage deeply the ideas that will be presented and to reflect on their implication for our collective advancement. Once again, this will be a rewarding and intellectually stimulating experience. Thank you, and God bless.
Vice Chancellor, the Pro-Chancellor, and members of the University Governing Council, the Deputy Vice Chancellors, the Registrar, the Bursar, the University Librarian, Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Deans of the Postgraduate School, other faculties and student affairs, professors and distinguished members of Senate, directors of centers, heads of departments, members of the university community, your Royal Highnesses and Chiefs, my Lord, spiritual and temporal, special guests, friends and well-wishers, all my students, past and present, great Nigerian students, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, as I sat in my study to write this inaugural lecture, I realized how God has been faithful to me, being my shepherd, shield, banner, and buckler, and for granting me the privilege to witness this day in strength, vigor, and good health to deliver the 38th inaugural lecture of this highly esteemed institution at Abiodun University. Interestingly, the lecture is being delivered by the first indigenous professor in the Department of Sociology, the first from the Industrial Sociology and Gender Relations Unit, and the ninth from the Faculty of Social Sciences. Indeed, the Lord has done great things for me, and I have every cause to be thankful to Yahweh. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, thank you for allowing God to make you a tool in His hands to create this enabling platform upon which I am standing today to present my inaugural lecture. Sir, I crave your indulgence to allow me to share one of the encounters I had with you in 2003, which continues to remain impactful in my life. At the time in question, I was enrolled for my PhD at the University of Ibadan and had received a message from the postgraduate coordinator to report to the department to defend my PhD proposal. Though I was happy that my proposal was approved to be defended on one hand, I was also troubled because I had no money at that time to travel to Ibadan due to certain challenges I was facing at the time. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, dejected and brooding over my situation as I walked through the front of the old faculty lobby, I saw you with some colleagues discussing, and I greeted all casually and continued my work. Surprisingly, you observed that I looked sad, and you called me in your usual manner. Daddy, meaning, Daddy, why do you look unhappy? I turned back, walked towards you, and reluctantly told you in a low voice that I needed to travel to Ibadan to defend my PhD proposal, scheduled to be held in 4 days, and that I had no money to embark on the journey. Immediately, you held my hand and walked me to your car. Then it was Mercedes-Benz 190 you were using. Opened the door, brought out money that you gave me, and told me to go and defend my PhD proposal. As I turned to take my leave, you called me and said, Dami, which means ensure that this money yield the desired results. As I continued on my work, I kept brooding over your advice on the need for me to ensure that the money you gave me yielded desired result. Having walked off your sight, I opened my hand to ascertain how much you gave me. I counted the money and ascertained that it was sufficient for my trip to and fro Ibadan. I jumped up, ran to my office, packed my things, and left for home to prepare for the trip to Ibadan. I arrived in Ibadan the same day, though late in the evening, and I settled down. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, your timely intervention 22 years ago yielded a positive result as I successfully defended my PhD proposal. Thereafter, I won the UNESCO Poland Pre-Doctoral Fellowship, which provided me with the opportunity to conduct aspects of my PhD at the University of Warsaw, Poland. In 2008, I defended my PhD thesis at the University of Ibadan. It is pertinent to note that had I not defended my PhD proposal at the time I did, winning the UNESCO Poland Pre-Doctoral Fellowship might not have been feasible. given that a major criterion to be eligible for the fellowship was that applicants must have defended their proposal successfully in their institutions. Today, you are the same person, but as the Vice Chancellor of Abiodun University, presenting me as an inaugural lecturer, although you might have forgotten that you bailed me out at a crucial point of need, but now that I recall it, I am sure that deep inside your heart, you will be excited that OTF meaning the money you gave me has yielded positive results. I remain ever grateful, sir. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I joined the services of the Abiodun University in 2001 as an assistant lecturer in the Department of Sociology. I rose through the ranks to the position of professor on October 1, 2016. Workplace sexual harassment, a brief. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, workplace sexual harassment is a pervading phenomenon in many organizations across the globe. Although it has received much attention from industrial sociologists and social scientists on its nomenclature, manifestations, drivers, reportage, effects on survivors and organizations, the problem persists for reasons associated with the relativity of norms across cultures, differences in its nomenclature and manifestations, conceptualization problem, and the problem of gender identification, particularly as it relates to the harasser and the harassed. Research done on workplace sexual harassment suggests that it occurs in all work settings, including academia, business, worship house, parliament, government, and the military, and it is on a steady increase with several outcomes for victims and organizations. There is no universally acceptable definition of sexual harassment because it has a broader scope and has been addressed by several disciplines with different approaches, and the relativity of what constitutes sexual harassment across culture poses an immense challenge. The International Labour Organization guidelines of sexual harassment prevention at the workplace defines sexual harassment as any unwanted conduct of a sexual nature, a request for sexual favors, verbal or physical conduct or gesture of the sexual nature, or other behavior of the sexual nature that makes the recipient feel humiliated, offended, and or intimidated, where such reaction is reasonable in the situation and condition, or made into working requirements or create an intimidating, hostile, or inappropriate working environment. Similarly, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission conceptualizes sexual harassment as an unwanted sexual precursor, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal and physical behavior of the sexual character. In Nigeria, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015 defines sexual harassment as an unwanted conduct of sexual nature or other conduct based on sex or gender, which is persistent or serious and demeans, humiliates, or creates a hostile or intimidating environment, and this may include physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct. From the foregoing definitions, sexual harassment occurs when persons are targets of unwanted gestures, sexual comments, or actions due to their real or perceived gender expression on the body, sexual comments, sexual intimidations, unsolicited gifts, jokes and sexual undertones, and display of symbolic clips that are erotic. Workplace sexual harassment can be classified into two categories, namely quid pro quo, which in Latin means this for that, and hostile work environment. Quid pro quo sexual harassment can be subdivided into two categories, exchange-based and threat-based, where the victims face threats of punishment for ignoring requests for sexual favors. Threats-based quid pro quo harassment can lead to the victim facing an unfavorable outcome, such as losing his job or having a desired opportunity delayed, e.g. promotion, based upon granting or refusing sexual favors. Regardless of its form, the defining characteristics of this type of harassment is that the victim's ongoing employment or career advancement relies on acquiescing to one or more demands for sexual favor from someone within the organization who has legitimate authority to confer rewards or impose sanctions. It is important to acknowledge that the term sexual favor can encompass a wide range of behavior, from solicitations for drinks or dates to much more explicit actions. A hostile work environment arises when an employee's workplace is inundated with discriminatory threats, mockery, and insults that are sufficiently severe and widespread to alter the condition of the victim's employment and create an abusive work atmosphere. Thus, it depicts a wider range of workplace sexual harassment than quid pro quo, which comprises a set of behaviors that frighten, endanger, or otherwise foster a toxic work environment for the victim. Examples of behaviors that could render the work environment hostile include whistles, comments with sexual undertones, sexist remarks, and the display of suggestive symbols. In contrast to quid pro quo sexual harassment, where the harasser must be superior to the victim, hostile work environment harasser will be subordinate to the harassed or non-members of the organization. According to Gilport's Rapoport 2006, pattern of perpetration of workplace sexual harassment can be categorized into 3 types. In the first category, type 1, holders of organizational power are the major perpetrator of sexual harassment, while the victim are those without organizational power. For example, the case where a superior is harassing a subordinate. Thus, the harasser will either be a male or female superior, while the harassed is either a male or female subordinate. In the second category, type 2, the individual committing the act of harassment does not hold formal organization, whereas the harassed holds organizational power. For example, subordinate staff harassing a superior staff. Thus, either a male or female who are subordinate will be the harasser, while either a male or female superior will be the harassed. In the third category, type 3, harassers are of the same status with the harassed. For example, when a superior staff harasses another superior staff who is on the same level, or when a subordinate harasses another subordinate. In any of the cases, the perpetrator and survivor will be either a male or female. My research focused on type 2, on women who are in position of authority and coordinate the activities of male subordinates under them by virtue of their position in workplaces, including the Nigerian Civil Service, Nigerian Air Force, Nigerian Police Force, and the Nigerian Correctional Service. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, despite the dynamics of sexual harassment occurring in workplaces, the conventional belief about the harasser and victim has not kept pace with the dynamics of reality in the workplace. Sexual harassment continues to be depicted as usurping power in the workplace. For example, a common slogan often used in the workplace is male supervisors harassing his powerless female receptionists. Such a depiction suggests that an unbalanced allotment of formal power is assumed to be a compulsory prerequisite for sexual harassment. Thus, a person occupying formal position or authority is not likely to encounter sexual harassment. Fayankinnu 2010-23. However, Fayankinnu 2024, 2016A, 2016B, 2015A, 2015B, 2012, 2011, 2010, 2004A, 2004B, 2003, and some emerging studies have challenged this view and argue that women in position of authority often constitute targets of sexual harassment than women not in similar positions. Surprisingly, harassers in such instances are usually men who do not occupy positions of authority within the workplace. Benson, 1984, described this type of sexual harassment as contra-power sexual harassment, which occurs when the harasser has formal power over In other words, contra-power sexual harassment takes place when an individual who has less organizational power, for example, a subordinate, sexually harasses another individual who has greater organizational power, for example, a superior, in a specific context. Thus, contra-power sexual harassment constitutes a type of workplace violence that entails the purposive usurping of power against another individual, which can have adverse effect on the physical, mental, and social well-being of victims. Globally, research suggests that there is a steady rise in the incidence of contra-power sexual harassment in the United States. The prevalence rate is estimated at 42%. 74.6% in the Nordic region, of 50% in Taiwan, and 69% in Australia. Other individual studies conducted within academia on contra-power sexual harassment also show a similar increase in contra-power sexual harassment. For example, in a survey conducted within the university among 130 male professors and 29 female professors, Carroll and Ellis 1989 found that 24% and 30% of male and female professors, respectively, constitute targets of unwanted sexual comments from students as frequent as 4 times during the average month. This study also revealed that 10% of the male professors and 27% of the female professors received sexually suggestive looks from students. In another study involving 188 male and female academics, McCain, 1990, observed that female academics experienced significantly more body language, physical advances, and explicit sexual proposition from students compared to male academics. Similarly, Marching and D'Souza 2000 reported that 53% of female professors experienced at least one sexually harassing behavior from male students. In sub-Saharan Africa, there is little research done on the prevalence of contra-power sexual harassment, possibly due to lack of data and reporting of incidents by victims. Nevertheless, some research suggests that the occurrence and a gradual increase in the prevalence of contra-power sexual harassment. For example, Maboyeli and Suru 2022's research on female leaders lived experiences of contra-power sexual harassment by male students in selected public universities in Zimbabwe revealed that female lecturers reported receiving unwanted sexual harassment remarks from male students at different times in the last 12 months before the study. In another study carried out within the university setting in Ghana and South Africa, the prevalence of contra-power sexual harassment is estimated at 32% and 14% respectively. Nevertheless, these studies are limited to academia and are conducted in other societies and may not be sufficient to explain the contra-power sexual harassment in non-academic organizations in Nigeria due to differences in the organizational climate and culture. In Nigeria, not much is known about contra-power sexual harassment, especially when it comes to male subordinates sexually harassing women leaders. This is because in the recent past, men are more likely to be appointed to positions of authority that grant them the power to harass women. Hence, previous studies done on sexual harassment in Nigeria has focused on traditional sexual harassment, defined as when the harasser possesses organizational power over the harassed. Findings from this study show that traditional sexual harassment is evident in the workplace in Nigeria, and the prevalence is high with social, psychological, and health consequences on women with implications on their work outputs. To curb the influence of traditional sexual harassment, scholars advocate, among other reasons, that the more women improve their law and gain appointments into positions of authority, the less likely they will be sexually harassed by males in the workplace. There is evidence pointing to the fact that more Nigerian women in security roles that were traditionally reserved for men and be appointed to positions of authority in workplace are gradually increasing pattern. In years 2020. Although there is a slight rise in the number of women in positions of authority in workplaces, this new shift has also ushered a new pattern of work relations in which women regulate the activities of male subordinates who serve under them. There is a lack of information on women leaders' experiences of sexual harassment by those subordinates for reasons linked to women leaders' unwillingness to report incidents of harassment, lack of detection, lack of legal framework, and the increased focus on traditional sexual harassment against women in the gender-based violence. Past studies conducted on women leaders' experiences of contra-power sexual harassment in the workplace depicts a steady increase in harassment of women leaders by male subordinates and suggests that they have a profound effect on victims and the organization. Fayankinnu 2016A, 2016B, 2015A, 2015B, 2012, 2011, 2010, 2004, 2004B, 2003, and others. For example, Contra-Power sexual harassment may interrupt women leaders' career, induce dissatisfaction on the job, and reduce commitment, result in low productivity, lead to high feelings of loss of control over emotion and body, destroy gender and identity, self-esteem, and women leaders' sexuality, cause nausea, headache, exhaustion, shortness of breath, sleep problem, weight gain or weight loss, and psychosomatic symptoms, and increase the tendency to quit the job. 2015, 2014, 2010, Inaugural, and 2010, Inaugural, and 2021. These outcomes pose a serious challenge that will make all victims of contra-power sexual harassment safe in the workplace. Even the following questions becomes necessary. Do women leaders encounter incidents indicating they face sexual harassment from male subordinates in the workplace? If women leaders report experiences of sexual harassment, what types of harassment do they encounter by male subordinates in the workplace? Women leaders experiences of contra-power sexual harassment from male subordinates. This is the first example. Studies like Inaugural 2022, Mawere and Soroto 2022 have shown that despite their status, women in position of authority perceive and experience contra-power sexual harassment in the workplace. Similarly, studies by Fayankinnu 2024A, 2024B, Fayankinnu 2016A, Fayankinnu 2016B, Fayankinnu 2015B, Fayankinnu 2015B, Fayankinnu 2012, Fayankinnu 2011, Fayankinnu 2010, Fayankinnu 2004A, Fayankinnu 2004B, and Fayankinnu 2003. And findings of contra-power sexual harassment in the workplace reveal that women leaders view certain behaviors by male subordinates as sexually harassing. These actions include male subordinates making pleasant by your physique, boasting about their virility, for example, regardless of any woman's status, I can handle her, and bragging about the size of their genitalia, for example, God must have walked over time by creating what is between my thighs, pulling their groans before women leaders, for example, holding up their groans before women leaders, being looked at lustfully, for example, gazing suggestively, gifting with suggestive underclothes, for example, gifts as apples, jewelry, utensils, sending suggestive text messages often from anonymous numbers, and unwanted physical contact, e.g., pricking of the hand. Furthermore, women leaders reported encountering sexual harassment from male subordinates during conversations in which the male subordinates pretended to make flattering remarks about them. In contrast, the intent is to send sexual signals which they find offensive. Male subordinates carefully select their words and subtly use them to deliver compliments, but emphasize these remarks repeatedly in a manner that makes a female leader feel uncomfortable. For example, Madam, you look beautiful. I admire your dress. It fits your body perfectly and reflects how much time God spent creating you. Thank you for the delicious food you provided in your flats yesterday. It was heavenly. I pray to continue enjoying your cooking. Still, during conversations, among themselves, still doing conversations among themselves, though not directly with women leaders. Male subordinates boast about the size of their genitalia and their sexual prowess with any woman, regardless of her status. They raise their voices to ensure that women leaders hear their discussion, indirectly sending sexual signals that they are capable of handling them in bed. For example, utterances such as, "I am a horse, and when I handle any woman, irrespective of her position in society, she will bow to my prowess," were mentioned by women leaders to have been made by male subordinates close to the windows of their offices. This behavior is threatening and offensive to women leaders. Thus, we may ask why women leaders feel threatened or sexually harassed by male subordinates discussing their sexual abilities with any woman. A plausible answer is that the African socialization process encourages men to boast about their sexual prowess, while it reprimands women for being vocal about their sexuality. Therefore, when male subordinates linger near the windows of women leaders' offices to discuss the vigor with which they can handle any woman, regardless of her status, it may be a calculated attempt to achieve two objectives. First, it will be intended to invite the women leaders into the discussion to see if they will support or oppose the views of the male subordinates. Women leaders' engagement in such discussions will foster familiarity and allow the male subordinates to learn sexual advances. Second, when women leaders fail to join the conversation, it serves as a signal to them that they are not exempt from being pursued like any woman that male subordinates can handle in workplace. Such a signal becomes threatening to women leaders because it creates uncertainty about the potential actions that male subordinates may take towards them. Symbolically, women leaders have encountered sexual harassment from male subordinates in the workplace in many forms. Women leaders in the sample of my studies recounted their experiences of how male subordinates pulled or held their groans before them amid an official discussion, intentionally to send the wrong signal that they were scratching, when in reality they intended to attract the attention of women leaders with symbols requesting sex from them. However, the act of men pulling their groans may not be solely attributed to sexual harassment, as Fayankinnu 2024A, 2012 has linked it to the cruel culture observed among black slaves and prisoners in developed countries. In those times, the pulling of the groan was used as a symbol to indicate the quest for freedom among slaves and prisoners. This culture was later imbibed by rap musicians, and it became a popular style practiced to date. The intention of the male subordinates when they pull their groan needs further investigation, given that they were not included in my studies. Another example of symbolic sexual harassment women leaders reported is being looked at lustfully by male subordinates, being gazed at their cleavages, breasts, buttocks, thighs, hips, and the way they walk. Such lustful looks, according to women leaders, pierce into their body so that it makes them feel naked and empty, and thus creates an imbalance in their body system and destabilizes them. Given the foregoing, there is a need to ask how women leaders dress to work that encourages male subordinates to gaze at sensitive parts of their bodies. Do some women leaders wear dresses that expose sensitive parts of their bodies and still find it harassing when male subordinates look at them? What constitutes a lustful look? And how do women leaders determine that they are being looked at lustfully? These questions are hanging and begging for answers, perhaps in a further study that incorporates samples of male subordinates to hear their side of the story. In all the studies I have conducted on Contra-Power sexual harassment so far, few women leaders experience unwanted touches on their body from male subordinates. In situations where male subordinates touch women leaders on their body, they hide under the disguise of helping to clean off dust or dirt from their clothes, or in the case of shaking hands, intentionally touching them on their body without their consent. In the case of shaking hands with male subordinates, especially those older than the women leaders, will prolong the handshake, tickle the palm of the women leader softly while remarking at her as my daughter. The tickling of the palm from the opposite sex will be abrupt and shocking, especially when it is done by a junior male staff member to a female superior without her consent. The act of tickling the palm of an opposite sex in this climb is physical, symbolic, and associated with meanings. For example, meanings such as I want to flirt with you, I want to have sex with you, you are a sex doll, and let's have one stand tonight, are associated with the tickling of the palm of an opposite sex. In this sense, women leaders view the tickling of their palm as offensive because it portrays them as a sex object created to satisfy the sexual urge of the male subordinates. Still worse is the fact that, except for the victim and perpetrator, it is very difficult to detect the tickling of the palm, thus leaving the survivor to brood over the violence while the perpetrator moves freely with shoulders high. In sum, women leaders experience more verbal sexual harassment and symbolic sexual harassment than physical sexual harassment from male subordinates. The fact that women leaders experience a higher incidence of verbal sexual harassment and symbolic sexual harassment from male subordinates can be explained within the purview of the power relations that exist between women in positions of authority as leaders and male subordinates as followers. Such power relations between the duo empower women leaders as subordinates over male subordinates and require that the latter comply with directives from the former or the sanction for insubordination. Aware of the difference in position of organizational power and the fear of being punished if caught in the act of harassing women in position of authority, male subordinates appear to resort to the use of subtle patterns of sexual harassment, such as verbal behavior and symbolic behavior, to sexually harass women in position of authority, fairly indirectly, patterns that protect male subordinates from easily being detected as perpetrators of sexual harassment against women leaders in the workplace. Drivers of Contra-Power sexual harassment. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir. Studies have associated survivors' experiences of Contra-Power sexual harassment with the plethora of factors such as lack of organizational policy that addresses sexual harassment in the workplace, organizational culture, physiological and biological traits of men and women, and lack of implementation of policy. In the studies conducted among senior female officers in the Nigerian Civil Service, Nigerian Air Force, and the Nigerian Correctional Service, Fayankinnu 2024A, 2024B, 2016A, 2016B, 2010, Fayankinnu and Akinde 2020, Fayankinnu and Okuni 2018, Akinawo and Fayankinnu 2010. That women leaders attributed their sexual harassment from male subordinates to the existence of traditional norms that defines the society from a male perspective, which views women regardless of their status as persons whose rightful place is the home and not the workplace. Thus, with such a belief of health, male subordinates tend to look down on women leaders, given that they consider it not cultural for a woman to give directive to men despite their status as junior males in the organization. Thus, male subordinates tend to feel threatened by the presence of women in leadership positions in organizations. Thus, as women leaders are breaking through into positions of authority, male subordinates are finding it difficult to come to terms with social norms that accorded undue privileges to men in the past are undergoing a transformation that is allowing women to gain entry into jobs previously reserved for men. My study on executive women's narrative of Contra-Power sexual harassment linked age to sexual harassment of women in position of authority by male subordinates. Fayankinnu 2012, Fayankinnu 2011. For example, I found that a significant number of the participants who participated in my studies were younger or in the same age bracket as the harasser, male subordinates. Older male subordinates seem to be emboldened by the fact that they find support from cultural norms that require respect to be accorded to the elderly, especially for younger ones. Younger women in position of authority tend to find themselves in a dilemma of having to align with the rules of rationality in the workplace on the one hand, and struggling to observe the informal dictates from the norms of the society on the other hand. These often creates a suitable situation for male subordinates to sexually harass their female superiors in the workplace. Another reason why women leaders are sexually harassed is that little or no sanctions are meted out to culprits. Hence, male subordinates take advantage of this to harass women leaders in the workplace, though using subtle methods that are difficult to detect and prove before a committee. The harassment of women leaders by male subordinates remain endemic, silent, and threatening. A question to be asked in this regard is why sanctions are not meted out to culprits. I observe that it is difficult to provide proof of being sexually harassed, particularly when the culprit engages in verbal and symbolic form of harassment. On the other hand, when the harassment is physical, for example, provided. In addition, some workplaces do not have a sexual harassment policy, and where they do, a significant number of the committees constituted to handle cases of harassment in the workplace are male-dominated. In situations where the committee includes women, they are often lower in rank than the men, and the committee is often chaired by men. As such, even if a survivor has a crude case, given that the gender mix is two-sided, getting justice may be a happening task for reasons associated with the fact that some of the men who are in the committee may have harassed a woman during their career. Thus, such men tend to shield other male perpetrators whose cases are brought before them from being sanctioned because they trivialize sexual harassment of women leaders and see it as the peg of the job. In a sense, it leaves women leaders with a lack of confidence in the impartiality of the committee, and this tends to hinder women leaders from reporting incidents of Contra-Power sexual harassment, which subsequently not just propagates sexual harassment against them in the workplace. The effects of Contra-Power sexual harassment on women leaders and the workplace. Mr. Vice Chancellor, there is empirical evidence in the literature to suggest that Contra-Power sexual harassment has adverse outcomes for survivors and the workplace. Similarly, I found from my research that survivors of Contra-Power sexual harassment reported that they were affected at 3 levels. First, survivors of Contra-Power sexual harassment reported a decline in their mental health. For example, anxiety, depression. Past studies show that anxiety can manifest in many ways, including persistent worry, panic attack, an increased heartbeat and sweating, or a specific phobia or social anxiety. Similarly, victims of Contra-Power sexual harassment in my study mentioned that they manifested at least one of the following symptoms after an incident of harassment from a male subordinate. E.g., headache, feeling something knocking inside their head, profuse sweating in the night, unable to sleep in the night, feeling hot internally, loss of appetite, increase in heartbeat, restlessness, itching on the body, persistent and excessive worry, and difficulty to concentrate. Second, victims of Contra-Power sexual harassment reported that the fact that they manifested a decline in their mental health, it impacted their feelings and belief about their job, which led to expressions of dissatisfaction with the job occasioned by Contra-Power sexual harassment. Accordingly, survivors of contra-power sexual harassment express dissatisfaction with the job, reflective of incessant absenteeism from work for fear of the hostile work environment. Such a hostile environment and negative work outcomes without doubt has an impact on the survivor commitment to their work. For example, survivors narrated that after an incident of contra-power sexual harassment, they became unable to think straight or concentrate on the job and feel restless and unsafe at work. In other words, these work outcomes, for example, work dissatisfaction, work commitment, absenteeism in the job, occasioned by the contra-power sexual harassment, impeded survivors' performance at work. Third, contra-power sexual harassment had consequences on the social well-being of survivors, and they mentioned that the traumatic experience of contra-power sexual harassment made them feel alienated, estranged from themselves, others, and the workplace. Thus, survivors experience loss of self-identity, low self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-dignity, and low sense of belonging. The foregoing raises two questions. First, will the experiences of sexual harassment from male subordinates account for the manifestation of health symptoms reported by the women leaders, particularly when other work stretches, such as long working hours, poor work environment, exposure to work hazards, burnout, etc., will lead to similar manifestations? Secondly, how does the effect of sexual harassment affect the professional performance and career progression of women leaders? The answers to these questions is better in physical research. Women leaders' responses to contra-power sexual harassment from male subordinates. Mr. Marcel Salazar. Women leaders have responded in several ways after they experienced harassment from male subordinates in the workplace. Fayankinnu 2024A, Fayankinnu 2020, found that while more than half of the victims of contra-power sexual harassment simply ignore or withdrew to themselves as the means to avoid the escalation of the scene, one-third of them yelled on top of their bosses and the male subordinate and complained against repeated such acts. It is instructive to mention that the survivors who told this night reported having experienced physical sexual harassment, that is, unwanted touch on the body from male subordinates in equivalence to the pulling heads from their boots, brushing the body against women leaders. Very few women leaders reported incidents of sexual harassment from male subordinates for reasons associated with fear of further complication or of the harassment, fear of being ridiculed and stigmatized in the workplace, lack of confidence in the members of sexual harassment committee constituted, the belief that they can handle cases of sexual harassment themselves, and in few cases that incidents of contra-power sexual harassment were reported. Women leaders are powerful. By their status as in positions of authority, they appear to be vulnerable to harassment from male subordinate staff because of the subjective nature of sexual harassment, which requires that for women leaders to initiate a case of contra-power sexual harassment, need proof to substantiate the case of harassment before any committee of inquiry. Surprisingly, male subordinates seem to be innovative and tweaking new techniques, such as using verbal and symbolic techniques of harassing powerful women leaders, which render them powerless to discipline any male subordinates in the workplace. Conclusion. Mr. Vice Chancellor, women leaders constitute a members of an endangered group who suffer particular forms of contra-power sexual harassment while discharging their duties in the workplace. Women leaders experience contra-power sexual harassment in verbal, symbolic, and physical forms. Specifically, they encounter more verbal and symbolic forms of contra-power sexual harassment than physical sexual harassment. Still, but more successful forms of contra-power sexual harassment may have been used by male subordinates to harass women leaders. This stealthy pattern of verbal and symbolic harassment also seems to be responsible for the seldom reporting of harassment by women leaders, since tangible proof is often needed to demonstrate that the harassment was perpetrated. Even when a woman leader reports an incident of harassment, given that the committee inaugurated to steer such matters is often male-dominated, few concrete outcomes are achieved. Thus, women leaders' agonizing experiences linger in the workplace. An implication of the foregoing is that the stealthy methods of harassment embraced by male subordinates constitute a tactful process through which gender differentiation is sustained within an organization to maintain male dominance. Thus, despite how powerful women leaders are by their status in the workplace, they remain powerless before male subordinates with their sexuality. Recommendations. Number 1. Non-governmental organizations, policymakers, and other stakeholders should develop policies and legislations that will help resolve the issue of corporal sexual harassment that cater for the safety and well-being of all workers, irrespective of their gender, against any form of gender violence in the workplace. Number 2. The gender mix of any sexual harassment committee should be balanced, having an equal number of both gender in the committee by their ranks and status to make for adequate representations and fair trials. Number 3, survivors of Contra-Power sexual harassment should be encouraged to report cases of sexual harassment to the appropriate authors in the event of an incident. Number 4, there is a need to create awareness and education initiative through advocacy programs and training sessions geared towards combating Contra-Power sexual harassment at different levels of society among both male and female genders. Number 5, there is a need to empower survivors by using a trauma-informed approach to hear and recognize the person's strength and resilience while taking into cognizance the trauma they have experienced. Number 6, there is a need to revisit the Yoruba culture that appears to encourage males to brag about their sexuality and harass women leaders. This aspect of culture needs to be put in the right perspective to ensure that it is not violent towards women leaders. 7, women leaders should learn to maintain formal relations with male subordinates in the workplace. If women leaders should guide against dressing in prohibitive ways that warrant male subordinates to remark on the tight fit of their dress. Acknowledgements. Mr. Vice Chancellor, I give thanks to God for this abundant mercy, love, favor, and kindness that sustained me to this time of my life, without whom I would have been less than nothing. To Him alone be all the glory. I appreciate my parents, who God used as tools in His hands to guide my life in this world. My father, Williams Fayankinnu, was a disciplinarian and a retired senior officer from the Nigerian Army. I recall that while growing up, you always told me to learn to live by my faith and not by yours. This advice of yours has contributed immensely to propelling me to the height I attained. My mother, Mrs. Margaret Michael Fayankinnu, who passed on January 21, 2021. You are indeed Nne, who cared for her children. You stood by me, fought for me, and gave me the necessary rudiments to survive in this world. Continue to sleep well in the bosom of your Creator. I appreciate the Vice Chancellor, Professor Olubenga Ebenezer Ike, for providing the enabling platform to present this inaugural lecture. I thank you for the role you played towards the defense of my PhD proposal, for appointing me the Director, Institute of Part-Time Programs at Abiodun University from 1st August 2021 to 16th March 2022, and approving my participation in the Technical Aid Corps in Uganda from 16 March 2022 to 16 March 2024. The good Lord will continue to uphold, increase, and sustain you in all your endeavors. I equally appreciate your able wife, Chief Mrs. Henry Fuluperi, for her motherly role towards my family. God will bless you abundantly. Other members of the University Management, Professor Clement Adebisi Daramola, the DVC Administration, Professor Olusegun Felix Akimobi, the DVC Academics, Mr. Olupegna Raphael Aradulu, the Registrar, Mr. Toby Orina, the Bossa, and Dr. Dory Yemisi Olorunfemi, the University Librarian, and their families are appreciated for their support and advice. I am grateful to all members of the University Senate who contributed to my experience and enhanced my administrative skills. I thank Professor Shola Olorunfemi, the Dean of Postgraduate School, Olusegun Matthew Akobi, Dean of Student Affairs, Deans of Faculty, distinguished professors, directors of centers, heads of departments, and representatives of the congregation on Senate. Also, I acknowledge the Dean of the Faculty of the Social Sciences, Professor Adebayo Fatukasi, for his warm gestures and support. The past deans of the faculty also showed me love and care. Professor E. Ogunbadewa of blessed memory, and Professor Mrs. A. Fashion-Multi. I thank you for being a mother. I cherish my warm relationship with all professors and heads of departments in the Faculty of the Social Sciences. I am also indebted to my colleagues in the Department of Sociology, both past and present, who embraced me through the course of my journey. I appreciate Professor O. Fashion-Multi, O.A. Alon, Dr. D. Micah, Dr. O.G. Owagbemi, Dr. O.G. Aruno, Dr. C.K. Imo, Dr. O. Olusoya, Dr. O.M. Fulani, Dr. Ipu Mola, Dr. S.O.A. Akimulumo, Mr. O. Olasayinde, and Mrs. Doraya for the support given me while I was the acting head Department of Sociology. I also wish to thank the non-teaching staff in my department, Mrs. Florence Urek, Akinola Evelyn, Emmanuel, and Oluwafemi Ogunle. I wish to express my gratitude to my senior colleagues and friends from other departments across the university, using Professor B.M. Akinola as a point of contact. I am grateful to my lecturers who taught me during my undergraduate programs at then Ondo State University, now Ekiti State University. I appreciate Professor O. Fashion-Multi, who supervised my undergraduate project and encouraged me in the path of lecturing. With him, I had my first publication in the year 2000. Professor O. Olufayo, the man who taught me industrial sociology, saw the future in me and advised that I take up the lecturing profession against the military. I am glad I took your advice. Professor C. Uluwadare taught me the nitty-gritty of medical sociology. Professor I. Ademola of blessed memory taught me problems and theory building in sociology. Professor A. Adesina, Professor Olaogun, Professor F. Ogudano, Professor A. Adebayo, Dr. B. I. Bobo of blessed memory, and Dr. S. O. A. Akipolobo. I appreciate Dr. A. Obemiata, who supervised my master's dissertation at the University of Ibadan. Professor I. Abadihe, E. Okafo, Professor A. Jegede, Professor Olutayo, Professor Aderito, Professor Mola, Professor Molulu, Professor Umi, Professor Bonda, late Dr. Lavinjo, and Professor I.P. Ogenoro, who supervised my PhD thesis and taught me the techniques of qualitative methods and techniques in research. Unfortunately, he passed on 7 October 2024. May your soul continue to rest in the bosom of the Lord. Furthermore, I cherish the work relationship with my people in the Department of Social Work and Social Administration at Makerere University, Uganda. Thank you to all of you using Professor M.E. Walakira as a point of contact. I am grateful to the past Vice Chancellor of the Adekunle Ajasin University, Vice Chancellors of the Adekunle Ajasin University, Professor N.O. Ninigo, who chaired the interview panel that interviewed me in 2000 and appointed me as an assistant lecturer in 2001. He also announced my appointment to the position of leader in 2013. And Professor I.A. Ajibefu, who announced my appointment to the position of the professor in 2016. I wish to express my gratitude to my senior colleagues and friends from other departments across the university, and I use Professor Emmanuel as the point of contact to others. I also appreciate Professor F.A. Gore, Vice Chancellor, St. Mary's University, Shukari, Akoko, Ondo State. I wish to appreciate members of the protocol unit using Mr. Victor Akinpelumi and Mr. K. Olaniyan as points of contact. I appreciate all my classmates, course-mates, and fellow alumni of the secondary school and universities that I attended. Dele Olagunju Adegoke, Adegola Olashade Adegoke, BC Ayo Olawo, Kayode Moses, Leye Adebiyi, Ibukun Olawole Omomowo, Kayode, Prince, Kende, Luna, Ashok Babajide, Sunday, Fayankinnu, Charles, Akimoboye, and all members of the 1995 sociology set, who I cannot mention for limited space. Thanks to all my past and present students. Any one of you and those I did not mention for space contributed to the success of my career. And I pray that God will continue to bless every one of you. I appreciate my siblings, my younger brother, Mr. Wesley Fayankinnu, and Kayode Fayankinnu, and sisters, Mrs. Oluwatoyin Fayankinnu and Mrs. Omotola Adeshina Fayankinnu and their spouses. I appreciate my in-laws, Mr. Emmanuel Ojo, Mr. Otunba Akiyemi Obisoya, Titi Lope Adejoke, Fola Shade Ojo, Mojisola Ojo, Mrs. Iyabode Balogun Adewale Ojo of blessed memory, and Adibade Adeshina of blessed memory. I appreciate all my fathers in the Lord for their support and prayer. In this regard, I especially appreciate Bishop David O. Oyedepo and Pastor Mrs. Faith Oyedepo. Pastor Stephen Onobanjo and Ronke Onobanjo, Pastor Christopher Jenny and Deaconess Germany, Pastor Michael Ajao and Deaconess Elizabeth Ajao, Pastor Michael Oribo Kuje and Bola Oribo Kuje, Pastor Joel Atoli and Deaconess Sonia Atoli, Pastor Shiri Akinbesote and Deaconess Tosi Akin Esote, Pastor Gabriel Bileso and Deaconess Mary Bileso, Pastor Shino Akikoade and Deaconess Bodupe Akikoade, Pastor Tevitope Akiboro and Deaconess Bolande Akiboro, Pastor Afolabi Ariwu Yo and Deaconess Roslyn Afolabi and Nabi Oliver Mbanifu, to all members of the Living Faith Church and Bakoko. Also, I appreciate Honorable Babatunde Kolawole and Mrs. Kemsola Kolawole, Mr. and Mrs. Dawme, Mr. and Dr. Mrs. Olonlani, Dr. Mrs. Iloy, and Yomi Fakudujo. I am thankful to my partner family members for their immense support throughout my journey. Mrs. Abiodun Fayankinnu, Shiji Fayankinnu, Rotimi Fayankinnu, Abiodun Fayankinnu, Ola Fayankinnu, Odun Fayankinnu, Lee Fayankinnu, Mrs. Samaina Omishore, Deaconess Akisheye, Deacon Akisheye Festus Bakdele, Uncle Olu, Sister Shumope, and Mrs. Fuluke Folake Adeoga. I appreciate the support and understanding of my lovely children. Israel Fayankinnu, Adaza Fayankinnu, Zipporah Fayankinnu, and Ephrat Fayankinnu. Together, you have motivated me to the heights attained. I am indeed thankful. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, may I crave your indulgence to introduce and deeply thank my wonderful wife, Mrs. Through thick and thin times, for her calmness and understanding, for her capacity to manage the home front even in the face of challenges, for her advice that keeps me going, and for accepting me with my imperfections. I remain thankful and will always. Several people were instrumental to my success in life. Time and space will not allow me to mention all of them here. Of you. I I dedicate this inaugural lecture in memory of my dear mother, Mrs. Margaret Fayankinnu. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.
Male subordinates, Contra-Power sexual harassment of women leaders in the workplace. It was just delivered by Professor Emmanuel, Abiodun, Fayankinnu. Please, can we all put our hands together for Professor Fayankinnu? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me now invite to the microphone the chairman of this occasion for his closing remarks. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir.
Thank you very much. Greatest Nigeria today. God bless you all. The members of management, Abiodun University, deans of faculties, directors, heads of departments, the inaugural lecturer, ladies and gentlemen, we have indeed listened to another inaugural lecture of this university, the 38th in the series. About 2 weeks ago, we listened to the 37th inaugural lecture. Today, inaugural lecture is the 30th. 2 weeks' time, we have the 39th. By all standards and justice, this university is on the global map. Let me thank all of you that have made today a reality. We are happy about it. Because without you here, it wouldn't have been so colorful as it is. So I want to thank all of you for coming. Let me recognize Dr. Timothy Atuyebi, the head of the Department of Sociology, Prince Abubakar Abiodun University, and Kogi State, who is here with us. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for coming. We also have with us there Mrs. Daniel, who is a friend to this family. Thank you for coming. Thank you. I want to particularly appreciate for having time to wait at the end of the inaugural lecture. Came on an official assignment to the Vice Chancellor's office. Fortunately, got there when I had moved. Decided to come around and waited patiently to the end of this inaugural lecture. Talking about CSP Rogers Lady, who is the officer in charge of Special Protection Unit, Ondo State Police Command. Beautiful. Thank you. Let me also appreciate the families of the inaugural lecturer. And this time around, you have to get up and take a bath. I noticed that when the inaugural lecturer was mentioning your name, all of you sat down. This is a day of celebration for you. So when I mention your name, you must stand up and appreciate all of us here, because we are all here because of you. This is Fayankinnu, Abiodun. Thank you. Fayankinnu, Israel. Fayankinnu, Olùsílẹ̀-Olúwa. Fayankinnu, Olúwatóbilọ́ba. You think I will mention your name? I will. Fayankinnu, Adọ̀lá. Thank you for standing by daddy. He said it very clearly. What for your support? Maybe we wouldn't be doing this today. Let me also recognize Mr. Fayankinnu West, who is the senior brother. Thank you for coming. Mrs. Adesina, sister. Thank you for coming. Mrs. Adesina, or Mr. And last but not the least, Mr. Inaugural. Gentlemen, I want to thank all of you, all members of staff, all distinguished professors who are here, former Deputy Vice Chancellor, Administration, Professor Yebade, thank you for coming. Thank you, particularly for having time to attend this inaugural lecture. We are currently being engaged by the state as the chairman of the visitation panel. We know what visitation panel is into a university. Yet, we still have time to remember us. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Director of University Advancements, the Director of Academic Planning, Professor Afolabi, thank you for coming. Thank you. Professor M.N. and Professor O.O. Basharati. You're welcome. Thank you so much. Professor Basharati O.O., very sure you'll be happy today. Fayankinnu was your student at the then Ondo State University. We mentioned it. Thank you too. Thank you so much. Professor Alon, you are here today because the inaugural lecturer is from your department. I've not seen you here before. So henceforth, you must be coming to inaugural lecture. Yes, Professor Alon is also of the Department of Sociology. Thank you for coming. Professor Hassan, Director of Education. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Professor Lani, Department of Adult Education. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Professor Mrs. Ebudoi, HOD Geography. Thank you. Thank you for coming. My dean, Dr. Wodewa. Thank you so much for coming. Another dean of mine, Professor Lolade. Thank you. Thank you. Professor Lodi Shaki, thank you very much for coming. Director of GST. Professor Lushola, Director Center for Research. Thank you. Professor Shomo, recognize you. HOD Chemistry. Thank you very, very much. Professor Alabi, the last inaugural lecturer. Thank you for coming. Professor Alabi, you see, one of the good things in this inaugural lecture is that you have one or two things to take home. When Professor Alabi delivered his own inaugural lecture, he gave us green influencer and the predator. And that day I said I'm going to ask a question. Which one do you be? Are you a green influencer or a predator? You know, that is from Professor Alabi's inaugural lecture. Today we have another one from Professor Fayankinnu. Harassment and the harass. You know, so I want to continue to encourage us to attend inaugural lectures. We will take something home. Now, where do you place that man in Abuja? Where do you place him? Is he the harasser or the harassed? So please write your answers and post it to my phone. Thank you very much, Professor Oyetakin. Thank you for coming. Professor Olaji with you. I recognize you. Professor Fumilaki, thank you for coming. Professor Akiruli, thank you for coming. Professor Kazi, Karim, thank you very much. Professor Fakebi, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Professor Ajidam, you are welcome. Who's there again? Professor Baji, thank you very much. Geography, Dr. Ogunlido, thank you. Professor Sociology or Psychology. Psychology, yes, thank you for coming. Professor Mrs. Allen, thank you. Barista and Professor, okay, thank you so much. HOD Computer, thank you very much for coming. That philosophy, and that philosophy. Thank you for coming. The Deputy Registrar Administration, Mrs. Arayibo, thank you. The Director, CWES, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Professor Adegoro, thank you for coming. Dr. Wabini of Sociology, thank you. Thank you. HOD International, Professor Business, thank you very much. HOD Science Education, thank you for coming. Thank you. Professor Akiruli, thank you for coming. Professor Woni, I recognize. HOD Information System, Dr. Akirumi, thank you, and thank you, and thank you. Professor Nizai Moro, thank you so much. That is your philosophy again. I mentioned you. FCA, thank you, you are welcome. And is that not Adene? Is that not Adene? Who is that? English. Mrs. Bambola. Mrs. Bambola, you receive salary this month. I thank you, you are welcome. They show the accounting. Thank you for coming. And then the director at BTP, you are welcome. Professor Mrs. Oluwalumoye, thank you so much. Professor Odotua, thank you for coming. The former registrar, Dr. Ayeri, thank you. HOD Politica, Dr. Iwu, thank you for coming. Dr. Mrs. Adiza, HOD Nursing, thank you for coming. My deputy registrar, Vice Chancellor's office, thank you for coming. HOD Public Administration, thank you for coming. HOD Arts Education, thank you for coming. Professor Ayeri, thank you for coming. Folami, thank you for coming. Who again? That's all. Let me thank everybody. President and the members of the School of the Student Union. I thank you all. Our Boys Brigade and the IBBROU. I thank all of you. I thank all members of staff for making this occasion a very, very joyful one. I pray that God is His evening message to see us through, and by the next inaugural lecture, all of us will be here seated to attend to that. The next inaugural lecturer is Professor Abiodun Oladoja. Professor Abiodun Oladoja is the Dean Faculty of Science. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Once again, I want to thank you all for making this program part of your day. At that junction, shall we all rise for the AAUA anthem and the national anthem?
Thank you.